Okay, I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. This is going to be explaining attacking turtlebacks with words. Okay, so the first thing we need to discuss that most people want to see, because I think it's important, is the angle at which you strike the platform. Okay, so I'm going to give you a basic drawing here and try to do my best to do it so you can actually read it. And I found one of my old drafting templates that I never used. I did some architectural drafting back in the day, but I never used this one. Anyway, let's see what happens here. And it brings back good memories, I think. Anyway, what happens is we need to look at the Hertzian cone, right? When you hit a material that fractures with a Hertzian cone like glass, what happens is you get this pop out. Let's see if I can finish this drawing here. All right, so we got a force that comes in this way, right? Don't think that's too small. Anyway, this angle here is 100, technically 104 degrees, and this can vary. I don't know if those numbers are too small. This can vary, right, depending on the speed of the projectile. In this case, they study projectiles hitting a surface that fractures with this Hertzian cone. Anyway, the higher the velocity, the steeper this gets. So it can vary. It can be like this, right? It can be a more pointy cone. I think that's what they mean. Anyway, so if this is 100 total, this line bisects it, and that means this angle. Let me see if I can do this. It's not going to look right. But anyway, I think you get the idea. From here to that line is approximately 50 degrees. Right? We're going to assume it's 50. So this means that the angle on the other side, it's going to be all messed up. The angle on the other side, this one here, that's 50, and this is a total of 180. That's 130 degrees. And I just so happen to have a little piece of wire bent to the correct angle. Right? Perfect. Now, this is the Hertzian cone in a perfect situation where you have a projectile hitting the surface, perfectly flat surface. All right? And now we have a perfectly drawn illustration of the conditions of a Hertzian cone. Okay. We do need to get this out of the way because this is the basis for the discussion. Now, let me find a rock. I just had a rock here. Okay, yeah. Does a rock have a perfectly flat surface, especially a biface that you've been knocking on, and you find out that you're obtaining a walnut instead of a biface, or what some people call a briquette? That was a funny one. Where's the flat surface on this stuff? There isn't any. Okay? That's the first thing. Second, when you strike, where's my little wire? Don't want to lose it. Okay, so when you strike on here, we don't strike directly. This is a pretty flat surface here. This is probably the flattest I can get. We don't strike exactly like this, do we? To create a Hertzian cone? No. We strike so that this cone is going to be like that. So we're actually striking downward. Now, it depends on what you're striking with, whether you get this exact angle or not. If you're hitting with something slippery, that doesn't grab the edge, even though you're coming down at the correct angle, this is actually going to fracture like this. So it's like a glancing blow. So you're essentially, the slipperier your object that you're hitting with your flaker, the slipperier it is, the more this angle is going to do this kind of things, to where if it's completely slippery, doesn't do anything at all, it doesn't grab at all, you're not going to get a flake. It's just going to, unless you only want to take a little bit off. That's another thing. If you have a very good material like copper that grabs really well, it's going to fracture at almost the perfect angle. That's why people use copper. It grabs better than aluminum or steel and antler as well. All right. So you're going to have almost the perfect angle when using copper. So you got to keep that in mind. The different materials will yield different angles of the fracture. So you have to adjust your angle of attack. And I call this the angle of attack right here. This one here, or this projectile trajectory, I call that the angle of attack. But it's actually the vector of attack. So anyway, but people consider this an angle because they're relating it to the stone. So what angle do I use? Well, visualize in your mind this particular arrangement. And if you want the flake to travel this way, basically it's going to be, it's going to, the angle of applied force or your angle of attack or your vector or whatever you want to call it matters, or which direction that crack is going to propagate. They call this the force wave or something like that. But how often do you see a flake crack like this? Never. This is what happens. Let me see if I can illustrate this, because this is a pretty good platform there, right? Anyway, let's see. Let's try to get this. And then you have this. You have various contours. Okay. So what happens is when you strike, let's say we come in, let's just make this nice and neat. Strike like this, and your mind knows perfectly what that angle is, because some of you guys are that astute that you actually know what angle that is, and you know what angle to hit just by imagining it, and it translates exactly to what your hands are doing, right? Right. You think this is what's going to happen. Yeah, in the thought experiment, this is what happens. What happens in real life? This Hertzian cone begins what they call a bulb of percussion, right? What's the bulb of percussion look like? It's curved, like that. Well, that doesn't look like it's going to travel that way. Well, guess what? It isn't. It's going to do all kinds of weird things. It does not follow this trajectory. The Hertzian cone or the conchoidal fracture and all that kind of jazz only pertains to this initial area right here. That's it. And that's like maybe 5%, I'm guessing, of what you need to know. This crack is going to propagate in weird ways. All right, so eventually going to feather out. But it's not going to be even. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's very steady. Sometimes it's extremely chattery, right? May even crack and step. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not going to follow this perfect trajectory. Now, will it mimic this? In your mind's eye, yes, right? You have this in your mind's eye and you say, yeah, it's going to basically follow that direction. But depending on what you're using for your tool, this could be very slippery. You could get a Bulbar Percussion like this, and you get that only. Or you could mess this up and be putting in too much velocity going this way and get a pop out like that. where the bulbar percussion is way too bulbous. Even though this is your angle, let me illustrate this. You're coming down at this angle, but this arrow or your hand could be moving too much this way. Even though you're at the same angle, you're striking with your tool, it could be moving this way more than you want it to be, and you'll hit too far inward. This vector will change, and you'll create a weird bulb of percussion. Okay? Now, does this also pertain to pressure? Is this angle also pertaining to pressure? Yes, it is. However, it is variable according to the material that you're using. And I'm not even discussing the material of that you're hitting. Let's see if I can read that. Right? The material, let's see, what's it called? Of the workpiece. Don't worry, I understand my mental challenges. The material of the workpiece is also going to affect this. Right? You can guess all the problems that happen. Internal defects, cracks, I call these incipient sometimes, not all the time. There could be natural cracks in the stone. There could be differences in the way it fractures, like obsidian fractures much differently than what you call rhyolite, for instance. Is it rhyolite? Right? Very different the way they fracture. You don't get the same bulbs of percussion, and you don't get the same results if you're using the same material on these. Like copper. Copper's going to give you different results on these. Sometimes something softer like a wood or antler actually produces better gripping power on rhyolite than obsidian, and that sort of thing. Better than copper on obsidian. All right, before I start going off into too many tangents and getting myself confused, let's move on. So, what do? Because this is basically useless, right? There's too many variables. Well, you just have to practice, right? That's the short answer. Practice, 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 practice hitting. But the easiest way for me to tell you how to approach this is, like I've said before, you pretty much forget all this stuff and just peel off these flakes. You'll get the hang of it. After a while, you just need to picture in your mind's eye that you're peeling these flakes off. All right? Let's see if I can actually peel a flake off. I don't visualize these angles in my head. I just know I can peel off a flake here by hitting there. This is kind of grippy material. Aluminum grips pretty good. I hit it right there, pretty much where I wanted. There was a secondary hit because it probably dragged along. It took off another piece. Right? We get an initial bulb of percussion. See the little bulb? But the angle, I don't know what angle I hit it at, but it was probably like this, right? Down, almost straight down. But I was moving in an arc, like this. So it's not as simple as just moving straight down. I was moving in an arc. So I don't know what angle this is. Well, it's got to be like this because it fractured that way. Yeah, I know. Well, that's the end result, but I don't visualize this angle of attack when I'm hitting. I don't look at the tip of this and follow that line with the tip of, or with the end of this flaker, right, or this billet. I don't follow that line when I'm hitting. It's an arc. It moves this way in a semicircle or an arc. Sometimes I go straight down, but that's only when I want to take a short flake. If I wanted to go inward to remove a flake, I have some some motion this way as well as that way, and it's an arc. It's not straight. Okay, so let's look at this. If I put this angle tangent to the top of that Bulbar Percussion, where did the flake actually end up? Where's the termination of that flake? It's down here somewhere. Right? Are you understanding what I mean? The Hertzian cone, the initiation of the Hertzian cone, okay, let's see if we can get some cooperation here. Okay. See how the top of that bulb is it's the initiation of the cone. But it doesn't follow that the whole way. See the difference between the end of the flake and the end of this wire? See the difference there? So this isn't going to help you very much. All right? It's just a basis for our discussion. What's really happening is something completely different. You can see the propagation of that pathway is not straight, and it often is unpredictable. Here's a negative scar. Okay. Now, did I plan on that happening? Well, I did see a ridge here, so I hit there. It would have been kind of foolish to hit there because it was kind of dished in, so I hit right where the ridge was. I did feel that when I was holding it, so it's instinctive. And you hit so that you have plenty of strength. The ridge is actually the strong part. That's why it follows a ridge, because it's strong. It makes sense, right? Now, why did it step? Why didn't it carry over all the way? Why did it break right there? Well, many different factors, right? We won't discuss them, but obviously the main one is contact with the platform. As long as I remain in contact with the platform, that crack will propagate, and if I had remained longer in contact with the platform, it may have taken off the rest of it, right? But in this case, I probably bounced off, and then it lost energy and just snapped instead of pushing through. Okay, now if I had hit it this way, it may have remained in contact with the platform longer because it has more mass behind the strike than this way. I preferred to hit this way because I have a closer feel this way. It's like my hand is more in control of what I'm doing if I'm close up to the strike point. If I'm like this, I feel like I'm distant from the strike point, and I tend to, do this sort of thing. I don't know what to do with it. It gets wobbly. It's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of I don't know. It's just too wobbly for me. Although I need to practice that. I can probably get better at it. Anyway, that might produce longer flakes in the future if I do it that way, which I've seen other guys do, and they have very good results. Okay, so anyway, hopefully that's a good explanation. Turtlebacks basically need to be attacked with a certain amount of strategy, but it can become instinctive, right? This little angle here does help somewhat, but just keep in mind that this is only the basis of what we're doing. It really has nothing to do with the actual result. It's just something, it's a starting point. And we modify and correct our strikes and our technique according to experience and with practice. Okay? So hopefully that helped. If there's any more questions, or if you want me to do another video attacking turtlebacks and stuff, just let me know. Okay?